You know what keeps me up at night sometimes and lives rent-free in my head all throughout the day? Really bad railroad paint schemes. Now, from a logistical side of things, the paint scheme hardly even matters. But as someone who spends way too much of my free time watching these big machines, you start running out of things to complain about at some point, so that's when I decided to start thinking about which schemes I dislike. Okay, that's a joke. I don't actually sit around and think about what I want to hate on, but like the video for a free heritage unit, subscribe so it isn't CSX, and thank you very much to my extremely dedicated fans. CSX YN3C. Is it the ugliest scheme? Not really. I guess I wouldn't even say it looks bad, but if we compare it to the likes of the legendary YN2 paint scheme, it is actually pretty bad. And if we compare it to the YN3 paint scheme, it's even worse. Because bro, it went from this breathtaking scheme to this piece of crap. Dog, you can't just take such a dramatic step forward and add so much change at once. It's not like you merged with another company or something. Jokes aside, both YN3 and YN3C are super mid. I honestly can't figure out why they didn't just stick with YN3B. I personally think YN2 is still the absolute GOAT of CSX paint schemes, but if we were gonna switch things up, the brackets around CSX were such a nice additive, and I cannot believe they seriously revised their paint scheme and just added a website. Like, that is so lame. This is gonna be a super heated one for anyone who was a BN foamer in the 80s. The BN Tiger Stripe scheme. This combination of colors was honestly just not very good. This does not appeal to me at all. Black and orange stripes really don't make for the greatest combination, and then combined with the Burlington Northern Green, that really puts the final nail in the coffin for this scheme. For the most part, railroads seem to be way better at paint schemes back in this era, but in the case of the BN Tiger Stripe scheme, no. That's one of the few things I'm glad is over. This one is probably a little bit of a hot take as well. Union Pacific's new scheme. I've gone back and forth on whether or not I like this scheme, and after quite a bit of time, I've finally made up my mind that it actually really sucks. Contrary to most people, I actually was a big fan of the first iteration because unlike the current one, you can actually see the shield. This current new scheme basically just looks like the Phase 2 scheme with a slightly enlarged shield and a little flag to the left of the number board. Very underwhelming and honestly confusing why they're going back to basically the same thing as before. I don't know, call me crazy, but the version with the big shield was actually a really cool scheme. Here's a less known, or at least less spoken about one, Faramex's new scheme. I'll admit, I'm a little overly picky at times, and it is a lot just prejudice against something new because I hate change, but the old Faramex scheme was just so much better. I think there's probably a lot of people who might agree with me on this one as well. I never really saw much Faramex motive power, but this scheme is just way too cool. The X with those 4 green stripes on the nose. Name anything more unique in this era of trains. Fast forward to now, just like every scheme that's come out in the past 4 years, they decided to fix something that wasn't really broken, and now it's full of gray triangles and stripes and it is stupid stuff. Not a fan at all. I really hate how they got rid of the dark green altogether. It's a really crappy scheme. I don't know, like look at this old one, look at the new one. You can't tell me the new one looks better. Amtrak Phase 6 and 7. Historically, for 5 generations of paint schemes, the color palette of Amtrak locomotives has been blue, silver, and red. Silver was always, at least to me, the most iconic color of an Amtrak locomotive, but apparently they got together and decided to trash an iconic look that's been in place pretty much as long as Amtrak has been around and make it blue. And of course all the coaches are still silver, so you get this hideous mismatched train most of the time. All the more reason for me to never be an Amtrak foamer. And I'm just talking about the new scheme here. That's without mentioning how ugly the chargers they put it on are too. I won't go down that rabbit hole today though, that's not even a paint scheme. The CPKC paint scheme. I know I've talked about this before, but you know, I hate it so much, let's talk about it again. Probably the most agreeable one of this list, the CPKC paint scheme. It's just so typical of two companies to merge and then proceed to base the new scheme off the more boring of the two. The fact that one day this abomination will replace the KCS Southern Belle just ticks me off so much. The whole stripe and black portion on the rear is honestly really weird and confusing. I don't see how it represents either of the two schemes. It seems like the whole scheme could have been pulled off so much better. They definitely could have incorporated a lot more from the Southern Belle, but instead they had to basically kill off arguably one of the greatest schemes of our time. I know I've complained about this scheme before, and I probably won't bring it up again because I don't want to get too repetitive. But if I live to see the day when every Southern Belle is replaced with the CPKC scheme, that's going to be pretty annoying. Speaking of annoying, there's also a lot of random things on different models of locomotives that are pretty irritating that I found. Maybe you'd be interested in watching that too if you enjoyed this video for some reason.